our lineup. So, or to resist or undo one. It's a type of group action and may involve individuals, organizations, or both. They represent a method of social change from the bottom. So as I think about that, movements and what it takes, and you think historically, we'll talk about some of these movements of moving. That's what it is. It's a movement of something that we want that is either not happening or it's happening and we want it to stop happening. And I think that we can all agree that one of the big goals is to prevent child abuse. And I'm going to set out, sorry, Loriana, I'm tooting your horn, another huge big plus because of the way that she approaches this, both on the news clip and in the press conference, and again today, that she gets it, that it's family strengthening as well. Because it's not enough just to say that we want to prevent this. So what does that mean? We want to promote. And she gets it, that those two work hand in hand. So as an extension specialist at Utah State, I do programming on parenting and positivity and marriage, couple relationships, because all of that. So I hope that you know your role, that you have a role, that you bring a tool, and it could be just a mini little, screwdriver or whatever your tool is. But each of us has a role in this movement to prevent child abuse and neglect, and I would say to promote healthy, happy parent-child relationships and family relationships. That's the goal. I think we can agree on that and have that in mind. Oh, thank you, Sarah, for putting that, because you do, maybe not right now, but you do want to watch that at some point. So really, to boil it down, I see this as these organized activities that encourage or discourage social change. And so many of us are doing so many great and wonderful things. That's, again, one more time, that this joining forces, man, that's incredible. What an incredible concept that we're joining forces. We don't all approach it with a hammer. Some of us bring a wrench and a screwdriver, and some of us are bringing drills. And we have this wonderful movement, this approach, and that we each bring different tools. Let me start out, if you know my presentations, I'd like to start out kind of on the, I don't know, the interesting or the funny side. So as I looked at some of these, we'll start out maybe with some interesting, some odd movements. I won't say maybe weird, but some of these are a little bit different. Okay. So again, I don't want to offend anybody. If anyone is a part of the if the Society for Barefoot Living, that's totally great. That's totally great. I think it's interesting. I just think it's interesting that there's, the society, and they're all for, and they're like the real deal. Yeah, they're talking about, bare feet in sports. I didn't, I was like, do people really go hiking with this? And then I was at Arches and hiking up Delica Arch, and I was passed by this woman hiking right past me in bare feet. And I was like, oh my goodness, how is she? And it's hot out there, and I talked to her because I had to ask her questions like, man, tell me all about this. And her feet were so calloused, that it didn't even phase her, didn't affect her. But it really is. So it's the Society of Barefooters, and what do they believe? They believe that bare feet are happy feet. They say that the more human feet are exposed to nature, the stronger and healthier they will become. So this means they choose to not wear shoes in most public places during sports and even while driving. So I don't know about how safe that is. They do not consider unsafe or unhealthy. So interesting. I just wonder what happens, in public restrooms and things are kind of gross. But that one, so there are all kinds of different movements we're talking about. No judging, just some interesting ones. Okay, this one, I didn't know if it was serious or not. This is the voluntary human extinction. I can't even talk, Lorianne. Extinction movement. Extinct. They want people to become extinct. They want people to stop breeding, like to stop having kids. And I thought, okay, that's an interesting one. So they say it's been suggested that there are only 2 chances of everyone volunteering to stop breeding: slim and then none. So the odds may be against preserving life on Earth, but the decision to stop reproducing is still the morally correct one. Some of us might disagree. Indeed, the likelihood of our failure to avoid the massive die-off, which humanity is engineering, is a very good reason to not sentence another of us to life. The future isn't what it used to be. That's kind of a grim outlook, because I think that we have great days ahead of us. Our children, I think, have a bright future, right? The movement may be considered a success each time one or more of us volunteers to breed no more. So we are being the change we want to see in the world. All right, but I'm not sure how. their conferences are attended, but that's an interesting and an odd movement. So if you're just joining us, yeah, you're like, what is going on here? Yeah, Dr. Dave's off the rails. So we're just talking about interesting and odd movements before we get into more of these. So just a couple more. This one was an interesting one. This is kind of a specific one that I'll read. So it was back in the 90s, the Anchorage Parking Authority, or the APA, had a reputation for aggressively ticketing the smallest offenses and offenses that had nothing to do with parking, such as studded tires or out of season and cracked windshields, that kind of thing. So one day in July 1994, the APA gave Carolyn Linney Pasillo, local gas station owner, a $75 ticket for having her license plate sticker on the wrong side of the plate. What? Which made her mad. Her sister used to work in downtown Anchorage and already didn't like the APA, so a scheme was hatched. Here's their movement. With wings, tights, and tutus sparkling, the Pasillo sisters raised funds and paid the meters for thousands of people and inspired so many spiteful Alaskans that the Anchorage Parking Authority earned over $100,000 less in just 1 year. After 4 years, the APA was disbanded and the Anchorage Parking Ferries, those girls, retired with a ceremonial burning of their wings. So, Lorianne, I'm not suggesting that we, dress up in tutus and we go around and shake fairy things. But this is actually an interesting example of the power of one or two people, right? Of what they did. They found something. They said, this is enough of this. We want to see change. And then they raised money. They had media attention. And actually, they were the cause of something to say, hey, we're not going to do this anymore. So that's another interesting one. The slow movement, I actually kind of like this slow movement. Some of you may be familiar with the slow movement. It's really it started in '86, and then I jokingly say, and it hasn't moved much since. Okay, that's not true. So it's really that the people behind this movement believe that all normal activities should be done slow, to savor them. Maybe I'll read the slide slow. No, I'm just kidding. And to slow down life's pace. They believe in slow relationships, slow work, slow exercise, slow hobbies and things. And then it's spilled over. There's actually, food pantries and things that are here in Utah as part of the slow movement. And I actually love this because I think in our fast-paced life, you can even tell by my voice, I tend to talk really fast. To be able to slow things down a little bit, even with parent-child relationships, sometimes I feel like this is rushed. And let's get your shoes on, let's get out the door, we're running late. And so it feels like this go, go, go. And they're saying slow, 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 just slowing life down a little bit. And so that's an interesting one, actually one that I feel like that has a lot of the positives as well to it. Okay, so with that as a backdrop, thinking about, all right, what is it really about movements? So, and I talked earlier about these tools that we need. We need you. We need every one of you. And we need every one of you to get 5 more people, right, involved in this and engaged in this to bring what you have. And I get it, some of it. And so I just use this kind of toolbox metaphor, this analogy that some of you may just have one tool, right? In your safety glasses. Bring your safety glasses. Bring those. Some of you have a tool belt and you have lots of experience. You've directed things. You are a mover and a shaker. You're a trainer, or you have an academic and you have all this knowledge, this information. Come, bring what you have. Work with where you are, because your sphere of influence will spread. And here really, I think, is the theme of what I want to talk about today. There's no greater responsibility in our work than protecting the safety of children. I truly believe that. And when I say that our influence spreads and our influence is contagious, the message that we share is an important one. I mentioned that it's contagious because research has shown, for example, that happiness and positivity is contagious. In fact, it's contagious up to 3 degrees away from us. Does that make sense? And so a little bit of research behind this. They've done studies at Harvard University and San Diego. They talk about how happiness spreads through social networks. So they found that when a person becomes happy, so one person becomes happy, let's say a parent, right, is positive and has happiness. So person becomes happy. A friend living close by has a 25% higher chance of becoming happy themselves. A spouse experiences an 8% increased chance, and for next door neighbors, it's 34% chance increase in happiness. Isn't that interesting? Just who we are spreads the message, right? The positivity, the happiness that we engage in when we're working with parents, when we're working with families, when we're working with children, who we are and what we bring, the tools that we bring, that spreads. That's contagious. It's picked up on. These mirror neurons even are being able to in sync. So this energy happens when we all have that same cause and that same goal as we move forward with the same type of a message. I realize it's a little bit risky when we share statistics and those types of things, because it's always it's difficult to know, how much is underreported and what's not being reported, and how reporting has changed over time. And so then this one's interesting because it was two different graphs, actually two different sites. And so I was trying to kind of piece things together, but it gives us a little idea. Again, it's not an accurate, perfect snapshot, but it gives us an idea of trends and where things have been heading over the years. It's important to kind of know where we've been, to know where we are, and to know where we're heading. If we have a goal, we need to know, to get the big picture of what has happened before us in movements. This one, again, the experts, you're probably aware of some of this, but as you look at the age groups, this one is, I don't know, this one kind of gets me choked. This one's really sad. All ages groups, it shouldn't happen anywhere. Like 0 is our goal. But you look at that, those that are under 1, those who are right, the shaken babies and the crying and they can't stop. You just see that huge number of cases there. And each of these is a person, and each of these is a story. So part of my message today, each situation is different. Each parent situation is different. And so our approach cannot be a one-size-fits-all approach, right? Some may need education, some may need mental health services, some may need both, right? Social connections, we'll talk about those protective factors, which Lorianne totally teed that up perfectly, and I'll add a little bit. And then the next couple of days, you're just going to get boom, pounded with more of the protective factors. So you see the number of child fatalities due to abuse or maltreatment in the U.S. way too high. No number is an acceptable number when it comes to children dying at the hands of parents, caregivers, or those who are in their care. Okay, we're not the first ones, and I think this is important. So a little bit of history, I think, is important for us to understand that good people, great causes, great movements, have been a part of this for a long time. And so this is not a comprehensive historical, Dr. Dave lesson to see what is happening over time, but a few little snapshots to see what others are doing, because it's critically important to know what's happening across the United States. What is successful? What have they done that was successful? What is the mission? And their goal, this is way, back like over 20 years ago, is you see that by the year 2020, there'll be obvious and substantial reductions in the amount of child abuse and neglect in the United States. And as you look back at some of that has actually happened. We need to celebrate the small wins. I think that's huge, important, because in this work, it can be very depressing. It can be very discouraging. If you are working directly with families and you see some of this can be traumatic. This can be overwhelming, daunting, and even very discouraging and depressing. But so we have to, I'm a big fan of celebrating the small wins. When we see what's happening, can we help? Can we learn from and build on what is working? So this is a movement, again, back in early 2000s, about children's hospital and health centers and partnering those in San Diego. And look, 3,000 child abuse professionals all coming together, and there's different reports as you look at the different reports online about what's happening. It was led by Mrs. Dominique Hensler, the director of the National Call to Action. And she said, by the year 2020, children in the earliest years of life will not experience abuse or neglect. And that was a great hope. And I think, a great vision to say, this is not going to happen. It didn't come to pass, but that is continually, I think, our big picture goal is to end child abuse and neglect. But we have to celebrate them, the thousands of little mini steps and wins in between. In 2009, then the National Coalition to End Child Abuse Deaths, they said, hey, we've got to put an end to this. This is unacceptable. They actually held a 3-day summit in Washington, D.C. Here were their recommendations. They came together and said, so big stuff is happening. That's why I'm sharing some of this. In order for the big change, people going back, DC, let's make some movement. And you see some of the strategies, some of the things that we need to pay attention to, even here in Utah. What can we learn from these summits, these things that are happening to increase funding, right? To change the confidentiality laws, those things, that little wins, they can help us as we move forward for these bigger cause of what we're after. This one, I'm not sure if you're aware of. I wasn't until I kind of looked around. Lorianne, you may be familiar with this or others, this endcan.org, but this was all by Lori Poland. She's the CEO. Very sad, but I love such an inspiration, right? She was abducted from her front yard at 3 years old by a stranger who sexually abused her in the mountains and then left her in an outhouse toilet for 3.5 days until these bird watchers came by and they heard her. And she survived, and she's resilient. She says, I'm gonna make a difference. And so this is their goal, is to end child abuse and neglect in her lifetime. And so I just look at Lori and I think, wow, when you talk about resilience, this is amazing. So it's a nonprofit organization. They're helping with the research, they're helping provide information, resources to help people to stop this. This is unacceptable, and we can't have this. So I hope that some of this is inspiring to say, yes, we need more. There are people, there are pockets of people, and we need to do what Lorianne talked about, joining forces and be aware of what each other are doing. So that, I hope, is one of the goals over the next couple of days, is to join forces, make new connections in these breakout rooms, and find opportunities to reach out, to connect. What are you doing? How can I help? Okay, so let's talk then about big picture social movements and why some succeed, why some fail. And I'll share 6 reasons, then I'll even kind of drill down into specifics about things that we can do at the personal level of connecting with people and with parents. One is the clear goal and strategy, right? Movements that are successful, they say, all right, is our goal. They say, this is what we're going to do to move forward, and then they always know what's next. And I love that. I love that idea of, yes, we need to focus on now, but we have to be thinking, what's next? What is the next thing, the little thing that we need to do? What's the next tool that we need to bring to this to help things move forward? What's the next person, the next phone call, the next curriculum, the next training, the next conference? What is next to keep this going? Because this can't stop. Movements have to keep moving, or that's when they will fall or fail. So we know it's a problem, right? That as far as the goals, a problem needs to change. And then we have to actually get very specific. Is the primary aim, is it to change people? Is it to change policies? Is it processes? Is it perspectives? Is it all of the above? And I think, yes, yes. And then I have a screwdriver, and I have a drill, and I have this, and we're going to attack this from different viewpoints. And we're going to hopefully change all of the above. But we have to know, okay, what is it? What marks success? Is it the reduction in numbers? Is it the number of families trained? It's all of these. Each of these helps us as we move forward and help families. So most social movements, this is just something that I thought of, kind of a little quote that I came up with. I think most social movements know their goals, but they may not know or be willing to engage in the 53 next steps or 153 next steps to achieve them. So I think, yeah, we have the goal. It's prevent child abuse and neglect, is strengthen families. So what do we do? Yeah, to be able to get there. All kinds of little steps that we need to do to make progress. Okay, number 2 is broad-based support. And I think that Utah, again, is doing amazing at this. This is community groups. This is a lot of those who are listening right now are a part of this broad-based support. It's university partners, right? The academics, it's down to the school systems, it's political leaders. It is, Lorianne talked about having champions, being able to have kind of high profile people that are there, the medical, the health systems, religious organizations, is the broad-based support. When you look at social movements that have succeeded, they've been able to reach out and tap and utilize those who have broad support. So I love this building together. I love that theme, building together, and that's what it will take. And as we continue to let people know, let other organizations know that aren't really directly related, they're not a family organization, but they're in a different area, let them know and be aware of what we're doing and how they can help. Specifically, I want to point out when I actually received an email, so I'm part of a big focus of mine is healthy relationships. I received an email from the Healthy Marriage and Responsible Fatherhood, and even they, on their side, they're aware, and they sent out a specific in their email specifically pointing out, hey, it is National Child Abuse Prevention Month. And and this is just one, I think, of many people, organizations that we're not aware of, that yes, they're on board, they're championing, they're aware of this, they're sending out the emails to those who may not be directly related. But again, that 3-degree separation, right? We need to be thinking 3 degrees separation of who are the other organizations that may not, wow, we think, how is that even related, right? If this field or that field, they can be touched and they must be involved. As well as the White House puts out a proclamation as well. So at every level, from the federal level on down to the personal level, it has to be involved. Number 3 is the leadership and the organization. And as you look at the leaders, Lorianne, I think being one of many leaders across the state who are organized, who are mobilizing, who are moving the movements forward, we have to have it. And I keep pointing out, Lorianne, with this, she brings like this massive tool belt, right? I can just see her with all these tools and things sticking out, and backpacks, and the hard hat and everything. She's going, but we need all leaders, those that have just a measuring tape, to come and bring what you have and help where you can, and follow and be aware of the leaders that are leading out. So you're in tune, you're seeing, you're watching, like the news conference, you're aware of what the leaders are saying and doing, so you can find your role and follow. So sometimes it takes leaders, and it takes a lot of followers and doers on the ground as well. I think a big part of this is networking, again, with now today we call them influencers who have a big influence on families, on mothers, who can help spread our message because they're having an influence. And I think that we can utilize and tap influencers in order to make this really work. We need to get the stories, the personal examples of public figures in the media, prominent figures, and some of these influencers we need to tap as well to build those relationships. I think moving forward is an area where we can improve and work closely with influencers to spread our message. Number 4 is external conditions. When you look at movements and what's happening and when it's happening, the timing of some of these, it's often related to an upheaval or an event or a school shooting, and all of a sudden, right, and now guns and all that kind of thing happens. It often happens because it's often sparked by something political, something that's happening in the nation that's getting the attention from the media, and then movements are ready to use that in a positive way to bring even more awareness and more coverage and understanding. And after the coverage are the resources. It's the so what, following the events, following the tragic situations or the extreme child abuse cases or the deaths that are happening in the news. We have to be ready to use those in positive ways, not to take advantage, of the media and of unfortunate situations, tragic situations, but to be prepared to move then and use those with a positive spin as well. Number 5 is this repressionary resistance. Okay, all of us, we're going to get pushback. We're going to get, and it's with this movement, right? Prevent child abuse and neglect. There's not as much pushback. Depends kind of on the angle people take, because no one wants to, go against preventing child abuse and neglect. But successful movements, they create tactics and build alliances with other groups. That's part of this joining forces. And so in my mind, we're doing it right. We're doing it absolutely the way that we should, and joining forces with others. And the media coverage, which was handled so well yesterday and the last, I'm sure, several weeks leading up to this. The media coverage absolutely is a must for successful movements. Have to have the media involved to be able to get the message out. And Rand portrays that so well. Every time she speaks about it, she talks about strengthening families as well as preventing child abuse and neglect. So again, that kind of sets the stage, at least 6 areas for what succeeds, what movements succeed, and which ones fail. And they start with, movements start with this perception, right? Something is wrong. Something is wrong, and we've got to be able to move this. And we know that what is wrong is the child abuse. But even then, we have to kind of even think back even 3 degrees, what's going on before that in relationships and parenting and mental health, drug and alcohol abuse. All of this is part of the wrong. And it's not just the child abuse and neglect, that we have to, again, 3 degrees, a separation of what is influencing that is going wrong. Stage 2 is this coalescence. This is the going public. It's often from the bottom up, from movers and shakers, from individuals as well as leaders, directors of organizations and community groups. Stage 3, as it moves forward, is this organizing, right? This organizing to get the job done, that there's often this messaging, whether movements is, hey, we're meeting, in downtown, we're going to be picketing, we're going to be protesting, and then it's a tweet, something goes out, it goes out to a group, and it just spreads like wildfire when they're able to rally and really get the job done, show up, and here's the sign, and this is what time and where we're meeting to get the job done. Now, and I'm not suggesting we have L'Oreal send out, hey, we're going to go riot. We don't want to. Our message is one of peace, but we have to still have a loud voice to make sure that we get the message across. Stage 4 is this, is success or decline. Is it going to be successful? Does it need to regroup? Is it simply time to slow down, to look at something else? So this is typical social movements. And I would say that ours is not the typical, Black Lives Matter type of a movement, or the Me Too type of movement. As you study movements, there's different goals, different processes, and how they go about it. So ours is a little bit different. Ours is a little bit tricky when you talk about preventing child abuse and neglect. Okay, so big picture, no social movement is going to succeed, is likely to succeed without some of these key elements. And that is with money, you've got to be able to have some resources behind it, the people that are moving it forward, the mass media, and this organization. So that's some of that critical piece. Okay, so I'm going to shift a little bit now, and I'll talk about, sorry, this is kind of blurry. This is kind of as good as I could get this picture to this graph to enhance. But as you look at the timeline of different types of movements, about I think there's some things that we can learn about what are some successful social movements and this power of change. And as you look at some of this comes from these sparks. I call them sparks. Something happened. Either it was a death, often, all right, a police shooting. There's protesters that are getting together and then say, hey, we're not going to have this anymore. It was this, you think about the civil rights movement, and you think of Martin Luther King, and you think about the buses and the people that would the things that would happen that would cause this chaos, that this is not right. Things need to change. But you look at the social movements, and they tend to have similar types of sparks, different things that have sparked a movement. So you think, what is the spark? What is it that we can take, that we can build on, that we can say, this is not right. Things need to change. So part of that is in discussions with other people here, that we can share. Okay, what is it that we need to look at to make this impactful in the what's the 1 year, 5 year, and 10-year goal. All right, so a little bit more, and then I'll share some information that will hopefully help us as we move forward. Okay, number 1, we have to make participation in what we do possible, and then probable is number 2, and then powerful. We have to make this possible, probable, and powerful, because successful social movements are they enable people, they empower people that say, yes, what can I do Ultimately, successful movements not only get attention, but they aim for power and connection. They're open to adaptation to challenges as well. So the key to successful movements is how they respond to pushback. There's going to be pushback along the way. There's going to be other things that will get the voice that are louder, that are more protests, that are more, this is more urgent and pay attention to us. But we have to be able to keep that attention continually. April is that month of where we really make our voices heard, but we have to have something every month to continue to move this along, or it doesn't get the attention that it deserves. Okay, I'm going to break this down a little bit then. As I thought about this word, this movements move people. And when I break down that word a little bit, it's move men and women, right? But in that word is right there. So meaning that it moves people. It moves people to action, to do something. And I loved what, Lorianne, you talked earlier about change doesn't happen by chance, right? And I just added change happens by choice, by things that we feel, but then we follow. Breaking it down even further, a movement, if I'm going to join a movement, I need to know not how it affects men or women or people. I need to know, how does it affect me, one person? How does it affect me? Because I'm not going to join unless it affects me personally. So that message of how does child abuse affect me? When maybe, I have a healthy family and I don't abuse my children. So how does this affect me? That's going to be the question many people ask. That's really important, for those families who are experiencing that, and that's a tragic situation. But how does this affect me? That's the message, right? Secondhand smoke. It was smoking. It was secondhand smoke that says, okay, this is now affecting me. It's not only affecting you, but this is affecting me now in airports and in restaurants and things. Now it's getting personal because it affects me. So really thinking about, how does it affect every single person? How does child abuse and neglect affect people, everyday people, everyone? That's the message, is that how does this affect you, and how does it affect me? Okay, so as I talked about multiple causes, I talked about this at the beginning, multiple causes of child abuse, okay, all kinds of risk factors, from ranging from substance abuse to stress to lack of education, or I'm not bonding with a child, or I snap, I don't know what to do. There are mental health issues, I think is a big one. The part of this, when you talk about risk factors, being able to, and some of these experience, multiple risk factors, many risk factors, and being able to balance that with what Lorianne and others will talk about are these protective factors. We know what works. We know how to help families, but it's not a prescription approach, if that makes sense. It's a personalized approach, not just do this and this will be the result, but we need to move from prescriptions to a personalization, right? Personalize it for this family. But these protective factors really are these, and I like to structure it in this house, right? And each of us bring our tools. We're experts in different areas, but you bring your tools and we focus on these protective factors. Hey, and I won't spend too much time on this, but Lorianne talked about, yes, it's more than preventing child abuse, it's strengthening families as well. So what we want to do is increase patience and compassion, kindness, and love and support. And another way that I like to present and talk about the protective factors is through the positivity pyramid. If you've heard me present before, then you may be familiar with the positivity pyramid that stems from the parenting pyramid from the Auburn Institute. Right up at the very top of this, we're talking about parenting and caregiving is correction. And it's more of what to do when things go wrong. And absolutely, parents need, and caregivers need to know, what do I do? What do I do when my 2-year-old does this? My 1-year-old won't stop crying. My 7-year-old, right, is hitting others. How do I do this? How do I manage this annoying, this difficult behavior? Absolutely, a part of our approach is we need to help parents. Part of that knowledge of parenting, child development, how to respond rather than react. Key component of this. Underneath this is the teaching, right? Children will respond hopefully better to our correction when we do a better job of teaching This includes a lot of us as educators and home visitors and those who work with your toolbox, is really working individually one-on-one with the families in their homes and in workshops and in education, helping them understand what they can do so they know more. When they know more, hopefully they can do better. And the effectiveness of our correction really depends on the effectiveness of our teaching. The effectiveness of our teaching depends on that parent or caregiver and that child relationship. So that relationship, increasing the quality of that relationships is vital. Underneath that, some of them are single parents. Some of them are living together, or maybe they're living with parents where there is a couple relationship there. That definitely spills over, and we need education. I know a lot of the education that I focus on strengthen the couple relationship, which then it spills over, right? 3 degrees. It spills over into the correction and the support that we have. Positive, happy, flourishing person. How am I doing fundamentally? And then I overlay the 5 protective factors. I say this is where they fit. These concrete supports in time of need, being able to be a happy, positive, resilient person, being able to be socially connected, influence my positivity. So I love this approach of the parenting, the positivity pyramid, along with the 5 protective factors, because how we focus, we need to be very intentional about what areas we are focusing on and how we're delivering it. Okay. So let me shift now a little bit, and with the time that I have remaining, I want to share a few specific examples of things that we can do, because I think really powerful movements require powerful moments. Okay, powerful movements require powerful moments, because that's what sparks it. It's a spark is a moment. It's an experience. It's an opportunity. So I'm going to share, it's just a 3-minute clip. I can't remember, so I might have to hit stop share because I can't remember if I hit the volume. So bear with me here real quick, because I'm going to share screen and then, okay, yeah, so I need to click share sound. Okay, so I'm back. Some of you may have seen this or seen this little video clip. I think it's powerful. So again, just 3-minute clip, but it shows the power of a moment, about one experience of what led to this change.
My dad's boss was a man that just caused you to feel angry all the time. And my dad was very angry. He took his anger out on animals. For example, he was reshoeing one of his horses, a 1,200-pound horse, and I was holding the horse, and he just hammered in this nail, and the horse jerked his foot and ripped his leg open. And he jumped and grabbed the rasp and hit that horse in the head, and 1,200 pounds dropped right there. And I thought he'd killed it. Well, I'd witnessed him doing this to animals, cows, sheep, horses, over and over again, and I always felt like I was the next one. We had 20 head of cows that we milked by hand, and we were out there milking the cows, and the cow next to mine switched her tail, and it was just long enough, and she had burrs in the end of her tail, and hit me right there in the eye. And I was sitting on a metal milk stool, and I jumped up, grabbed that milk stool, and went around there and said all the things that I heard my dad say, which were very profane. And the cows were in the stanchion, and I just literally beat that cow almost to death. I realized that was his favorite cow. And he's back there, and I just started quivering all over, because I knew that what was in for me. And I waited and waited and waited, and he didn't come. And finally he came and sat right there. And I witnessed one of the greatest blessings of my life. My dad said, "Ivan, if you'll stop, I'll stop. And from that moment on, I've never known a more gentle, helpful, kind human being. And at that point in his life, he drank alcohol and he stopped all of that. And it took me literally months to realize I had witnessed one of the greatest miracles of love possible. He loved me so much that in that instant, he completely changed his life.
It's a great book, by the way, the outward mindset. Oh, yeah, let me get out of here. Oh, let's see if I can. Okay. Okay. I think that, I think that's an exception, right? I think that's an exception. But what I guess the point is that change happens differently. And I want to point out, some parents will never change. That's really difficult, isn't it? Some parents will not change. But in my mind, each parent is a puzzle. We don't know what it will take for that person to change. It's figuring out that puzzle piece. It's trying to know what direction. Is it a home visit? Is it 20 visits on a home visit? And on that 20th visit, something changes? Or is it one visit and something is said or done that changes? Is it a counseling? Is it 20 visits? Is it one? Education? Again, 20 classes? Is it one classes? The point is that we can't give up and get discouraged in this, because we don't know the moment something will click for a parent or a person or a partner in that situation. Change happens when we feel something strong enough to move us to follow it. Change happens when we feel it and then we follow it. And it's when reactions, right, are replaced with new responses and these new brain-wired habits. And some of this takes weeks and months because the brains are wired. We don't know a different way. And it's so hard not to snap, because that's the way that my parents did it. And I've seen it, like in this case situation, just watching his dad. And so he just went off with his profane language and he beat, just like he saw his dad beat the animals. But something changed that moment in his dad's mind, and he saw his son doing the same things that he was doing. And we don't know when that moment will be, right? Because just the way that we've done things, the way that we've always been done, doesn't mean that is the way forward. Okay, so I'm going to pause and break things up a little bit. If you have a piece of paper and a pen, I want you to take that out right now. Some of you, if you've been in my parenting workshops, you've seen me do this. So you got a piece of paper, you got a pen or pencil or something, because you're gonna hold this up to the camera. Dang it! So I'm gonna make you accountable. Okay, so I'm going to give you 60 seconds. And in 60 seconds, I'm going to start the timer in a minute, but I want you to draw a police car with as many details as you can. Okay, so that is the goal. You're going to draw a police car. And so the timer starts right. 3, 2, 1, go. Okay, about 30 seconds left. Okay, I see some smiles. I think it's been a long time since some of you have drawn a police car. 5 seconds, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, pause. Now, if you're willing, if you're brave, I want you to hold your police car drawing up in front, and I'm gonna scroll through and take a look at some of these. Okay, this is great. Yeah, look at this. Ah, this is wonderful. Okay, good. Yeah, some of them are a little too close to the camera and they're pretty blurry. But yeah, I'm seeing many of these. Uh, okay, this is great. Yes, thank you, thank you. Okay, yeah, I learned. Well, hopefully you learned a few things. Learned a couple things. One is that we're in this area and we're not in art, are we? Yeah, not art. Not many of us are artists, and that's okay. I'm not an artist as well, so I'm not poking fun at your thing. Yeah, I saw ambulances and it looked like a Wiener Mobile or something that I saw that one of you drew. All kinds of stuff. Now, I noticed a few things. Most of the drawings, I noticed that, yeah, how many of you had lights? Like if you have your little raise your hand, like that little button on the side or whatever, yeah, that shows like, yeah. How many of you had lights? Did any of you have lights? Yeah, most of you. Okay, yeah, all the hands going up. Good. How many of you had doors, windows, those kinds of little features as well? Any of you have like a star or it said police or some kind of a symbol? Anybody have a symbol on your? Raise your hand if you had a symbol. Okay, so a lot of common features. Okay, let me ask you, most of them that I saw were, okay, yeah, okay, put your hands down. Let me ask you this one. How many of you drew it from the side perspective, like the just side of the side view? So put your hands, yeah, raise your hands if you put it from the side view. Okay, that's interesting. Now think about that. Many of you drew it from the side perspective. And I'm going to ask you, why did you do that? And in your mind, just kind of think about, why did I do that from the side perspective? Is it because it was easiest? Was it because yeah, and you can actually put it in the chat if you want, as far as like why you drew it from the side perspective. Maybe that's the only way that you know how. Maybe that's the way that you've always done it, is drawn police cars from the side perspective. You didn't know how to draw it from another perspective. It was, yeah, you can't draw 3D or 2D. It was easier, Stephanie says. Yeah, you get the most details in, right? Yeah, there you go, Deb. You can get, yeah, a lot more on there. And maybe that's the way that you see police cars. But I think all of us have seen, police cars from different angles. Okay, and so I'm seeing a lot of this. Is the only way I knew how. It's the first thing that comes to mind. It's the only way I know how to draw a car. I love this because you take a look at what's happening in the chat. And now you ask yourself, why do parents parent the way that they do? Why do our parents, right, with abuse and neglect? And right, Andrew, it's the first thing that comes to mind. It's the only way I knew how. It's easier. It's how I learned to draw cars. It's the only way I know how to draw cars. Okay, so this is the perspective of many parents when they're engaged in this, and they have seen it. This is the only way that I've seen parenting done. This is the only way that I'll get my child to respond or to listen to me, is the way if I raise my voice or if I do things a certain way. That you can learn to draw a police car from a different perspective. We can have an artist come in here and help us draw the car from a different perspective. Parents can learn to do things differently. And some, it takes long, just like some of you could learn to draw pretty quickly a car from different perspectives. Some of you, it would take a long time to learn. We have to have patience and it wouldn't be perfect, but change happens over time for most people. And some people, it's a moment. In others, it happens over time. With a lot of education, a lot of patience. The point of this is that you can learn that most of us do things for reasons that make sense to us, from our own perspective, the things that we're used to seeing things done. But we can learn a different way, and parents can learn a different way to do things. I think ultimately it starts, and here's another little one, it starts with living true to our core values, and I call it our core 4 values. I want you to, each of you, think for a minute, maybe on that same piece of paper, or I'd love to see them actually in the chat. And we've got about 9 minutes left. I want you to think about, what are your core values? Okay, so now your children, or maybe your partner, is speaking at your funeral. Okay, and I don't get too morbid here, but now it's your funeral. You're in the casket. What do you want people to say about you in just 1 or 2, up to 4 words? What do you want them to say? Do you want them to say, they were, Dr. Dave, he was such a funny guy. Like, what? Wait a minute, what? That might be a fun thing or something. But man, that's not what I want them to say at my funeral. What is it? And I love this. Keep them coming. What is it? If they could only say one or two things about you at your funeral, what is it? This connection, this kindness, loving, giving, kind, compassionate, loved his family, empathy, care, caring, integrity, family, hard work. Look at this. Isn't this amazing? This is coming in the ad with no fear. This is amazing. That she changed me. I love that, Lorraine, that they were an influence, that she was a powerful influence for good. She was positive, she was humble, she was loving, loyal. Look at that. Here's a list. This is not, please do not, this is not an exhaustive list, okay, friends, that I'm showing. But this is a list of some core values, what people think like, yes. But I love this. Keep them coming, spreading happiness, hopeful, happy, positive, generous, that when they get up and say, right, Mary Jo or Julia or Nancy, right? Yeah, Nancy could drop in these cards. That's great. Yeah. Yeah, hopefully that's not what they say. The one thing that they say about you, they could drop these. But ultimately, the point of this is knowing your core four. And when you work with parents, I think we need to help them understand of all the things that they're learning after you're gone, they won't have you there to kind of help them. They have to understand deep down who they are and understanding that when they act on their four, not on their feelings. Because when, yeah, I want people to say Dr. Dave was compassionate, that he was kind, that he was a loving person. In the heat of the moment, right? When I snap at my kids and I get after them, what have I done? I've just violated a core value. When we violate core values, we feel guilt, we feel shame, we feel all of this, which is hopefully a motivator for us to then ask for forgiveness and to try to live. The point of this is when we live true to our core values, we will have joy. We'll be, our relationships will be better. It comes down to your core four. Helping parents understand, have them write them down. I've written them down. My spell the word CHAP: compassion, humility, appreciation, and positivity. Those happen to be my core four. And I remember them because it spells the word CHAP. Parents have to understand and instill in their own children as well. What are your core values? Live true to your core values. When you're tempted, right, to raise that voice or to raise that hand, think, how will this violate my core four values? It's a key part of what our message is. I think the greatest gifts parents can give, and then hopefully, right, that the parents realize this, that we love gifts. Are the greatest gifts that we can give are our attention, our understanding, our compassion. And I've even said, the greatest gift is not your time. The greatest gift you can give me right now while I'm presenting, it's not your time, right? You're on here. It's your attention. That's the great gift. Helping parents to pay attention, to giving their all in attention, putting down their phones and giving their children attention. I think asking these key questions will help us. Because ultimately what we have is a child abuse problem. Deeper down, we have a compassion problem. We have an understanding issue. We have a love problem, right? An awareness and an attention problem. What would it like to be him or her? Asking the parents to ask these questions about their children. What are my child's worries? What are their hopes? What are their fears, struggles, or concerns? What can I do to be more helpful? And then this one right here. If I were to give my whole heart to my child, what would it occur for me to do or to say? And as parents or caregivers, as they quietly listen inside and then act on those feelings, answers, they'll begin to see and feel a real difference, noticing the nudges and following those feelings. Some of you, and I have these, and I'm happy to give these out. In fact, I can mail them to you to give out to parents. I mail them all across the state, so send me an email. My email's at the very end of this. It's a Make Time for 9 bookmark, and I kind of rush through these as I've just got a couple more minutes before I wrap up. 9, make time for 9. Every parent can make time for 9. 9 minutes. Every parent has at least 9 minutes. 9 meaningful touches. 9 minutes of conversation. First 3 minutes after they wake up, or the last 3 minutes of the day before they go to bed. Simple little parenting kind of hacks of building that relationship, because that's what's critical, is that parent-child bond, that parent-child relationship. For sake of time, I'm gonna skip through some of this because I do want to hit home some of my as I wrap up. And I'm happy to send this PowerPoint out, actually, Lori, and I can send it out or send it to folks, and they can have the entire thing if they're like, no, where do I get this? You're going through fast and not taking notes. What we really need, some of you heard some of these words before, is to search inward. Search inward for each of us is knowing your role and your strengths. And the commitment here is commit to learning more. What's my role? What are the tools that I'm bringing? Number two is turning outward. So we search inward, we know our role, we know our strengths. Turning outward now is to move to improve where you were planted, wherever you are. If you're in Payson, Utah, if you're in Ogden, if you're in St. George, wherever you're planted, commit to doing more. Move to improve, doing a little bit more. So commit to learning more and then commit to doing more. Number three is look upward. Be aware of the problems, the processes, and the partners. Looking to connect, joining forces with each other, because we can't do this alone. The commitment here is commit to connecting more. So learning more, doing more, connecting more. And then number four is pressing forward. Staying positive, staying persistent through the challenges, through the opposition, through the difficulties, through the dark and difficult days, through the struggles. It is knowing and committing to your why. Why are you doing this? Why are you involved? Why are you on this conference? Why are you participating? That there's something in you that wants to rise above and to help and to do a little bit more to help families and children have a brighter hope and happiness in their future. So as I wrap up, we need you. We need you to bring the tools that you have. We began with this message that there's no greater responsibility in our work than protecting the safety of children. So come with what you have. Learn and start with where you're planted in that sphere of influence, and be a positive light, because that positivity, the things that you're doing, they can spread up to 3 degrees out of the good work that you're doing. So that's my hope, is that you will feel it, that you'll follow it, that you'll know your strengths, that you'll know your core 4 values, that you'll help the families that you work with understand their core 4, that they'll write them down, that they'll be a part of their lives, internalize them, and hopefully that will help guide them, that compass that will guide them as they make better choices in the future. So there's my email address. Again, if you'd like some of those, I will send the PowerPoint in, and they will put that on the website. But this is, feel free to reach out, connect with me, and send me an email, and I'm happy to share, even to mail those Make Time for 9 bookmarks, as many as you want. I send thousands to schools and organizations to spread the message. So, Lorianne, thank you, and back to you.